"You're not family. My son," Lucas said coldly at dinner, the words cutting through the air like a knife. I had sold my house to help him with his mortgage, sacrificing everything I had to make sure he and his wife, Isabel, were stable. I thought I was doing the right thing, but clearly I was wrong. They didn't need me anymore. I didn't respond immediately, though I felt my chest tighten. It was like all the air had been sucked out of the room. For a moment, I stared at my plate, pretending I didn't hear what was said. But the truth was, it stung. I had done so much for them, and yet here I was, sitting at a dinner table with my own son, feeling like a stranger. This wasn't the first time I had been dismissed, but this was different. Lucas had never spoken to me like this before. I thought back to the days when he was a child, running around the house, calling me for everything. I gave up my career to be there for him, to support him and his dreams, but now, he was telling me that I wasn't part of his life anymore. "It's not what you think, Mom," he said, noticing my silence. "We just can't keep living this way. You're not the one helping anymore. I am. It's time to let go." The words echoed in my mind as I sat there, trying to process what had just happened. I knew he had grown up, and I knew he had a family of his own. But this was betrayal. The woman who had raised him, who had given up everything to see him succeed, was now an afterthought. I stood up without saying another word. I could feel the weight of their judgment as I slowly walked out of the room. There was nothing more to say. The house that had once been filled with laughter and love now felt like a cold, empty shell. I knew, in that moment, that everything had changed. My role in their lives was over. I wasn't family anymore. I didn't need to stay in a place that no longer welcomed me. I would have to find a way to live my life, to move forward without them. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of silence. The house, once bustling with life and laughter, now felt empty, like the air itself had become thin. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the walls that had witnessed so many years of memories, birthday parties, anniversaries, and the everyday chaos of raising a family. Now, all of that seemed distant, like it belonged to someone else. I ran my hand through my hair and stood up, the weight of the previous night's conversation still heavy on my chest. I walked down the hallway, trying to make sense of everything. The kitchen was cold, untouched. I opened the fridge and grabbed some juice, but the act felt hollow. My son had said I wasn't family anymore. His words kept echoing in my mind. I couldn't stop wondering what went wrong. Wasn't I doing the right thing? I had sold my house to help him, to ensure he wouldn't lose everything he had worked for. But now, it felt like I was just a burden. A piece of furniture no longer needed. I thought about my husband, who had passed away just a few years ago. He would have been so disappointed in Lucas. He always said that family was everything, that no matter what, we had each other. But now, it felt like that bond had been broken. I couldn't help but wonder if all the sacrifices I had made were worth it. I had given up so much for them, for my family. Yet here I was, sitting alone in a house that no longer felt like home. The quiet was deafening. I thought about calling my daughter, hoping she would be different, that she would understand. But she had her own life, her own family. I hadn't heard from her in weeks. I felt my throat tighten as I sat down at the kitchen table. Maybe it was time to face the truth. My role in their lives was over. I had been replaced, pushed aside, just like that. My phone buzzed on the table, and I glanced at it. It was a text from Lucas. "Mom, I need to talk to you. Can we meet later?" I stared at the screen, unsure of what to feel. The words, "I need to talk to you," didn't bring comfort. They only reminded me of the distance between us. I didn't know if I was ready to face him again, but I knew I couldn't avoid it forever. I replied, "Sure, when and where?" As I sent the message, I felt a strange calm wash over me. It wasn't a calm of peace, but of acceptance. I had done everything for them. Now, I had to do something for myself. Later that afternoon, I met Lucas at the small cafe around the corner from my house. It was a place we used to visit when he was a teenager, back when life felt simpler, when everything was still within reach. The cafe was quiet, just a few people scattered at tables, the soft hum of the espresso machine filling the silence. I sat at the table, waiting for him to arrive. My hands were shaking slightly as I folded them in my lap, the anxiety creeping up on me. I wasn't sure what I expected from this meeting, but I knew I wasn't going to let him manipulate me anymore. I had to stand my ground. When Lucas walked in, I immediately noticed how different he looked. The carefree, eager boy I once knew was gone. In his place was a man, distant, guarded, almost cold. He sat down across from me, not meeting my eyes, his hands fidgeting with the cup in front of him. "Mom," he started, his voice low, almost hesitant. "I know things have been tough lately, and I appreciate everything you've done for me. But," he paused, taking a deep breath, clearly struggling with what to say next. I waited, my heart pounding in my chest, but I kept my face neutral, giving nothing away. "But you don't need to keep helping us. You've done enough," he finally said, looking up at me. "I don't want you to feel like you have to keep sacrificing for us. You've given up so much already, and I don't want you to feel obligated anymore." The words hung in the air, heavy and final. I could feel the knot in my stomach tighten. I wanted to yell, to cry, to make him understand how much this hurt, but I didn't. I stayed silent, staring at him. After a few long moments, I finally spoke, my voice steady but firm. "Lucas, I've spent my entire life giving to this family. I've put everything I had into making sure you and Isabel were okay. I sold my home to help you. Keep yours, and now you're telling me it was all for nothing." His face flushed slightly, but he didn't respond. I could see the guilt flickering in his eyes, but it wasn't enough. It wasn't enough to take back what he had just said, to undo the damage. "I don't know what you want from me, Lucas," I continued, my voice softer now. "But you don't get to treat me like I'm not part of this family just because I've reached a point where I need something back. I deserve better than this." He opened his mouth to say something, but no words came out. I saw him struggle, caught between the person he used to be and the person he had become. Finally, he stood up, pushing his chair back with a soft scrape against the floor. "I'm sorry, Mom. I really am. I just don't know how to make it right." I watched him walk away, and for the first time in a long while, I felt a sense of closure. He hadn't apologized for what he had said, but I didn't need him to. I had made my peace. It wasn't easy, but I knew now that I was ready to take control of my own life, regardless of how my son viewed me. I had given all I could, and it was time to focus on what I needed now. The path ahead wasn't clear, but for the first time, I felt like I could walk it alone. The days that followed were filled with a strange kind of numbness. I went about my routines, though everything felt off. The house, once a place of warmth, now felt like a cold, lifeless structure. I spent my mornings in the kitchen, making coffee, trying to focus on simple tasks, but my mind kept drifting back to that conversation with Lucas. What was it all for? The sacrifice, the sleepless nights, the years of putting everyone else's needs before my own. And for what? To be told I wasn't family anymore? I sat at the table, sipping my coffee slowly, as if time could somehow stand still, giving me a moment to breathe. But it didn't. The days kept moving, and I had to keep up. I thought about calling Isabel, to hear her side of things, but I already knew. She had always been distant, always had. A way of making me feel like I wasn't really needed. She had become a part of their lives, and I was an afterthought. But I wasn't going to sit around anymore, waiting for scraps of attention. I decided it was time to take control of my own life. No more waiting for them to come around. No more putting myself second. I had spent so many years feeling invisible, like I was just a fixture in their lives, and I had to let that go. I had to find my own way. It wasn't going to be easy, but I knew I could do it. I didn't need their approval anymore. I didn't need to depend on anyone. One evening, as I was cleaning up after dinner, I received a call from my sister, Ruth. She had heard about what had happened, and, like the good sister she always was, she wanted to check in on me. "I know you've been through a lot, Helen," she said gently. "But don't let this break you. You've got a life of your own, and it's time to start living it for yourself." Her words hit me harder than I expected. They weren't just words of comfort. They were a reminder that I wasn't alone. Ruth had always been there for me, even when I felt like the rest of the world was turning its back. I thanked her, but the conversation left me with something more than just comfort. It gave me a spark, a new sense of purpose. The next day, I went through my things, old letters, photographs, the remnants of a life I had built with my husband and my children. I packed some things away, keeping only what truly mattered. I wasn't going to hold on to the past anymore. I was going to step forward into whatever came next. That evening, as I walked through the house, I realized how much it had become a prison. The walls were closing in on me, and it wasn't just the house that felt small. It was the life I had been living. I had to break free. I didn't know where I was going yet, but I was going to start fresh, and it was going to be on my terms. I felt a sense of relief wash over me. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe again. The following week, I began to make changes. The house, once filled with memories of my family, was now just a place I was passing through. I could no longer hold on to the past, especially not when it had been so painful. I spent my days sorting through boxes, giving away things I no longer needed, and planning for a future that didn't include constantly waiting for the approval or affection of my son and daughter-in-law. It was liberating, in a way, but also deeply sad. I had been a mother for so long, and now, it felt like that role had been stripped from me. I had given everything to them, and now they were gone, emotionally if not physically. I knew it was time to move on. One afternoon, as I was going through a pile of old letters, my phone rang. It was Ruth again. "Helen," she said with her usual gentle tone, "I've been thinking. You shouldn't be alone in all this. You need to come visit me, just for a few days. Get away, clear your head. I'll make sure you're taken care of." Her offer was kind, but it stirred something in me. I realized I had been waiting for someone to fix things for me, to make the hurt go away. But no one was going to do that. I had to do it myself. I thanked Ruth, but I told her I needed to figure things out on my own. I needed space to heal, to find my own way again. The next day, I made a decision. I was going to sell the house. It wasn't the grand, beautiful home I had once dreamed of, but it was mine, and it was time to let it go. I found a real estate agent and began preparing for the sale. The thought of leaving was bittersweet. I had lived there for so many years, but it had become a symbol of everything that was wrong in my life. It was no longer a home. As the days passed, I started to feel a sense of control again. I wasn't dependent on anyone anymore. I didn't need my son's approval or my daughter-in-law's kindness. I was going to start over, even if it meant doing it alone. I began looking into new places to live, places that felt fresh and exciting. Somewhere I could build new memories on my own terms. The process was slow, but every step I took felt like a step towards reclaiming my life. And then, one evening, I received a letter. It was from Lucas. I opened it slowly, my heart racing as I read the words on the page. "Mom," it started, "I've been thinking a lot about everything that's happened. I know I haven't been the best son, and I know I've hurt you. I'm sorry for that. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I just want you to know I regret how things turned out. I don't want you to feel alone. Please call me if you want to talk." The letter sat in my hands for a long time. I didn't know what to feel. Part of me wanted to pick up the phone and call him right away, to hear his voice, to believe that things could go back to the way they were. But another part of me knew that things would never be the same. I wasn't the same. I had grown stronger, more independent. And that, in itself, was enough. The days following Lucas's letter were filled with a quiet, almost strange sense of peace. I didn't rush to respond, knowing that time had a way of helping things settle. I spent more time outside, walking through the park near my house, breathing in the fresh air. It felt good to be away from the heavy weight of the house, the place that had once felt like everything but now felt like a prison. I was slowly learning to live without relying on anyone, to be okay on my own. I began to get involved in local activities, joining a book club and volunteering at the community center. These small steps filled my days with purpose, and I started to feel like I was finding myself again. But there was still a part of me that missed the connection with my son, the bond that once seemed unbreakable. I wasn't sure if things could ever go back to the way they were, but I knew that I had to try to heal, even if it meant doing it without him for a while. One afternoon, as I was sorting through some old boxes in the attic, I came across a scrapbook. It was filled with memories of when Lucas was young, birthday parties, family vacations, his first bike ride. I sat down on the floor, flipping through the pages, each photo reminding me of the love and care I had poured into raising him. There was one photo that stood out. Lucas and me, smiling on his graduation day. He looked so proud, and so did I. I felt a wave of sadness wash over me, but also a sense of resolve. I wasn't going to let the past define me. I had given him everything, and though he had distanced himself, I still wanted him to know that I was here for him. I picked up the phone and called Ruth. "I've made up my mind," I told her. "I'm going to write Lucas back. I don't know what will come of it, but I can't keep holding on to anger. I want him to know I'm still his mother, no matter what." Ruth's voice was full of encouragement. "I'm proud of you, Helen. You're stronger than you realize." The next day, I sat down and wrote a letter to Lucas. I told him everything I had been feeling, how much I loved him, how hurt I had been by his words, but also how I was working on moving forward. I told him that I would always be there for him, but that it was time for both of us to grow. I sealed the letter with a sense of finality. I didn't know what would come of it, but I was ready to move on, to take control of my life again. It was a new chapter, one that I was writing on my own terms. The phone buzzed as I finished the letter. It was a message from Ruth. You did the right thing. No matter what happens, you're doing this for yourself now. I smiled, feeling a sense of calm I hadn't felt in years. I had let go of the past, and I was finally free. Weeks passed, and as I moved forward with my life, I began to feel a shift inside me. The house was sold, and I found a small apartment not too far from where I had lived for years. It wasn't much, but it felt like mine, my own space, a place where I could truly start over. I spent my days unpacking, organizing, and adjusting to the rhythm of a new life, one that didn't revolve around the needs of my family. I had spent so many years caring for others that the concept of focusing on myself felt both foreign and liberating. I filled my apartment with plants, brightening up the corners with life and color. It felt good, and for the first time in a long time, I felt hopeful. Still, I couldn't completely let go of the nagging emptiness that lingered inside. My son, Lucas, had not reached out. I had sent the letter, but I didn't expect an immediate response. A part of me wondered if he would ever respond at all, or if he would even want to. The pain of that thought was still there, but it no longer consumed me. I was learning to live without him, without the constant ache of waiting for him to acknowledge me. I had become stronger, and in a way, that strength was enough. One afternoon, as I sat in the park, reading a book I had borrowed from the library, my phone buzzed in my bag. I reached for it, startled by the sudden break in the quiet. It was a message from Ruth. Helen, you've been on my mind. I think it's time to reach out to Lucas again. You've done so much for him, and now it's time for him to realize what he's losing. Don't give up just yet. The message struck a chord in me. Ruth had always been there for me, offering her unwavering support. But this time, something inside me hesitated. I wasn't sure if I was ready to reopen that door. Was I willing to risk more disappointment, more pain? I sat quietly for a moment, turning Ruth's words over in my mind. I had spent so much time thinking about Lucas and his feelings, about what he might think of me. But now, I was starting to realize something important. This wasn't just about him. It was about me. I needed to stop putting my life on hold for someone who didn't seem to care. The decision wasn't easy, but I knew it was time. I wasn't going to chase him anymore. If he wanted to reach out, he would. I was going to stop waiting for him to make things right. Instead, I was going to live my life for me. That evening, as I walked back to my new apartment, I felt a quiet sense of peace wash over me. I wasn't broken. I wasn't alone. I was enough, just as I was. And no matter what happened with Lucas, I had already begun the journey of healing. The road ahead was uncertain, but it was mine to walk. And for the first time in a long while, I felt ready. It had been a month since I made the decision to let go, to stop chasing after Lucas. And yet, I still found myself thinking about him. I had started to rebuild my life in small, but meaningful ways, volunteering, taking walks in the park, even joining a local art class. My world was slowly becoming more colorful, more fulfilling, and I felt a kind of freedom I hadn't experienced in years. But there were moments when I would catch myself wondering if I was making the right choice. Should I have given him another chance? Did he really understand the depth of my hurt? I shook those thoughts off quickly. I was no longer the woman who clung to the idea of a family that no longer existed. I was learning to live for myself. One Sunday afternoon, while sipping tea and reading a book in my apartment, the doorbell rang. I hadn't been expecting anyone, and for a moment, I hesitated. When I opened the door, I was surprised to see Lucas standing there, his hands in his pockets, looking as unsure of himself as I had ever seen him. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The air between us was thick with unspoken words. Finally, he cleared his throat and spoke. "Mom," he said quietly, "I've been thinking a lot about what you wrote to me, and about everything that's happened." His words were careful, almost hesitant, but they held something more, something that I hadn't heard from him in a long time. Remorse. He paused for a moment, gathering his thoughts. "I know I hurt you, and I'm sorry for that. I've been blind, selfish, and I didn't see how much you sacrificed for me." I stood there, watching him, unsure of how to respond. Part of me wanted to reach out, to embrace him and tell him everything was okay, but the other part of me knew that I had to keep my boundaries intact. I wasn't the same person. Who would forgive without understanding? Lucas, I said softly. You can't just come back into my life and expect things to go back to the way they were. I've changed, and I'm not sure if I can ever go back to being the person I was before. The words hung in the air, but I didn't regret saying them. It was the truth. I had moved forward, and while I was willing to hear him out, I knew I couldn't allow myself to fall into the same patterns of dependence and hurt. He nodded slowly, his eyes downcast. I understand, he said quietly. I'm not asking for things to go back to the way they were. I just want to be a part of your life again, in whatever way you think is right. I felt a mix of emotions. The past hurt was still there, but it was no longer the thing that defined me. We can start over, I said, my voice calm but firm. But it's going to be different. We have to move forward, not backward. He looked up at me then, his face a mixture of relief and gratitude. Thank you, Mom, he said quietly. And for the first time in a long while, I felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe it wasn't too late for us to rebuild our relationship. But this time, it would be on my terms. I wasn't going to settle for anything less than respect and understanding. I had learned the hard way that I deserved that much. Months had passed since that day when Lucas came to see me. Our relationship wasn't perfect, but it was different now. We were learning to communicate, slowly, cautiously, but there was something solid beneath it all. I wasn't waiting for him to fix everything, but I could see he was trying. And for the first time in a long while, I felt a sense of peace about it. One afternoon, we decided to have lunch together, just the two of us. It was small, but it felt like a big step. We sat at a quiet cafe, and as we ate, we talked, not just about the past, but about the future. We laughed, a real laugh, not the awkward kind, but the kind that reminded me of when he was younger, when we used to spend hours together just talking. It wasn't perfect, but it was something. Mom, he said, looking at me with a sincerity I hadn't seen before. I want to make things right, not just for you, but for me too. I've been selfish, and I see that now. I smiled softly, my heart swelling with a mix of relief and pride. Lucas, I replied, it's going to take time, but we're on the right path. And that's enough for me. The conversation shifted to lighter topics, and for the rest of the afternoon, I felt like I was sitting with the son I had always known, not the stranger who had been so distant for so long. As we parted ways, he hugged me, and I hugged him back, feeling a warmth I hadn't felt in years. It wasn't the same as it once was, but it was real, and that was what mattered. The next day, I received another letter, this one from Isabel. I wasn't sure what to expect, but as I opened it, I felt a strange calm. It wasn't an apology, but it wasn't cold either. She expressed how difficult things had been for both of us, how she regretted the way things had played out. She wrote that she understood if I couldn't forgive her, but she hoped we could find a way to coexist, to share the space in our family without resentment. I sat with the letter for a while, thinking about it. I wasn't ready to jump into a relationship with Isabel the way I had with Lucas, but I could see that she, too, was trying. And that, in itself, was a step forward. I didn't respond right away. I knew it would take time for me to process, to figure out what I wanted from this new chapter in my life. I wasn't rushing into anything, but I felt a new sense of clarity. This wasn't just about repairing relationships. It was about healing myself, about rediscovering who I was outside of being a mother, outside of all the sacrifices I had made. I had learned the hard way that I had to take care of myself first. The future wasn't set in stone, but for the first time, I was ready to embrace whatever came next. My life was mine again, and no matter what happened with Lucas or Isabel, I was going to make the most of it. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was living, and that was enough.